Away at trying to get this Zoom thing to work, and I have my guests with me today, Mr. Derrick Sherwood and Phyllis Lewis. And today, technical difficulties and everything else that may ensue aside, we are going to be discussing something that's very near and dear to all three of our hearts because when I met my husband, I told him quite frankly to have bail money because one thing that I was going to be capable of was going to jail if I saw anybody abusing or misusing a child or a animal. And luckily enough, we still have that money in the bank, but there's always time. There's always time. And what we're discussing today is shared parenting. And I have been adamant from the beginning that then most of the time, dads have been getting, I believe, the short end of the shared parenting stick for a variety of reasons. And I know, Derrick, that that is a battle that is near and dear to both yours and Phyllis's heart. So let's have you catch us up a little bit. I know that you've had shared parenting issues and stuff in the past, and why is this so important to you?
So, I know we've talked before about this, and I really think going into the details. Basically, long story short, I got a divorce back in 2022, where there were a significant amount of false accusations. To include domestic violence, which I was never convicted of, and I'm going to make that very clear. I had a domestic violence protection order put against me unlawfully and I believe unconstitutionally at this point. Because so we but that was used and is still being used in the divorce to say he's a bad father, and I think that kind of highlights the silver bullet that they've kind of put in this case, which is a tactic that is being used widely by attorneys, specifically the attorneys in Grand Forks, where they will make false accusations of domestic violence, but because of the court system here, it runs it through faster than what you can do to get an actual conviction or non-conviction by a jury, to make sure that you're actually innocent. And once they run it through, you're screwed. And it's just that simple. There's nothing more you can do about that.
Well, I just find it interesting because one of the things that I went through, a lot of people don't know, but I was in a extremely troubled relationship that
Mhm.
I eventually got out of. And as I was getting out of it, it was a very difficult process. And one of the things that I was consistently urged to do was do exactly what happened to you. Now, legitimately, I could have done that. The reason I chose not to was because the gentleman was a police officer. This would have royally messed up his entire career, the rest of his life, everything else. And therefore, I said, what good is it going to do me to get out of a relationship by completely destroying someone I professed to love for X amount of years and giving him something to really, really get upset about other than my leaving? And the fact is that I believe that in too many of these cases, the cause is not righteous. The cause is simply used as a law tool in effort to gain leverage, and thus does what I had tried to avoid to do, which is it destroys people and it
Yeah,
destroys somebody's dad.
it destroys more than just a dad. It destroys a family unit as a whole. Because, and again, I think everybody can agree here. Divorces happen. You make mistakes in your past. You may not, at the time when you're young and in love, you think it's the greatest thing in the world, and then you find out who that person actually is. Uh, Especially after you start living together, and then they start trying to use manipulation tactics. It really comes into play in the divorce court, where effectively you are putting the next 20 years of your life in the hands of a judge. And that is where a lot of the major problems come in. And judges, not saying all of them are bad, but I will say there's been some questionable ones here in my divorce case where they make rulings that because the laws of North Dakota are, and a lot of places in general, are very vague, and I would say borderline unconstitutionally vague, to the point where it just, well, it's whoever has the best lawyer and whoever can argue their position the best and let the judge, well, I woke up on this side of the bed, this is what I'm feeling today.
The other problem I have is too often organizations like the CVIC, Health and Human Services, or whatever get involved. And quite frankly, they make their money by staying in business. How do they stay in business? They stay in business by separating those families so that the father has to go through them to see the kids, the mother's needing their support. They're not, how can I put this? They make more money keeping the problem alive than they do solving it.
Yeah, we're I can speak specifically on the CVIC, or Community Violence Intervention Center is what that acronym stands for. It's very specific to Grand Forks. While they do have a lot of things like that in North Dakota, they are very much in the business of making sure families stay separated, but only at a convenience. And I know I've mentioned this to you before. I literally watched a friend of mine who was a male get a Marcy's card because his ex-wife was crazy, received banging on his door, saying, I mean, she was the one taken off of the cops, threatening him, doing all this stuff. And the CVIC, when he was presented that Marcy's card, they said, you're no, we're not going to support you. And it was specifically because he's a male, because I know there's other situations like Phyllis's where there's been organizations that have said a lot of things, yeah, well, no, we're going to give you lawyer fees, we're going to make you travel, we're going to pay for your travel to come back to the situation where so you can testify in court. I mean, and the other thing that CVIC does is supervised parenting, where they will literally have somebody sitting into your room unconstitutionally, so you do not have you can't have freedom of speech with your kids. I mean, there's a whole lot of reasons that CVIC and all these other organizations, I mean, do they do the right thing for some people? Yeah, sure they do. I believe they do. Do they do the right thing equally across the board? No, they do not. And that's where the biggest problem comes, is they don't do it equally across the board. Because if we're going to, effectively talk about what their mission is, they if somebody presents them a Marcy's card, they should be getting the same services, and they do not do that.
Absolutely. Now, Phyllis, you had a situation and you said that you had an organization similar to the CVIC and they helped you.
Oh, sure.
And so, so what Derrick just said is very true. And your situation was you were literally held hostage and other things. And so what I want to make sure everybody understands is Phyllis, basically, give us just a little bit of background here, but you came through hell and back.
Well, yeah, sure. So I was in a relationship for almost 20 years. We had our ups and downs like any normal relationship. Let's face it, there's no fairy tale relationship. It got to a point where, I wanted out. I was done dealing with things, and I'm sure he was done dealing with things to a point on his end. He didn't really want a divorce. He wanted to, until our youngest was 18, to avoid, in his words, child support. So he agreed that he would move away and whatnot. He didn't really take it. It was back and forth. Well, no, we're going to work this out. No, I'm going to leave, this and that. And it got to a point where he just got so in the moment and heated that he ended up one night just taking my phone, taking our children's phone, holding us in a room, threatening to harm us, and then ended with him. And, luckily I was able to kind of, agree to go to a vacant area, so we could further talk, which in his mind, he just wanted to end everything right there. Luckily I was able to, so the way the situation happened, I was able to kind of get broken apart from him and able to call for assistance. And he was arrested, on the scene with that. And I was provided the Marcy card too, and whatnot. And that organization, they really came through, because I did a lot of blaming in the moment. I think that's a normal reaction, is to kind of think, well, what did I do that led to this buildup, or was there things I could have done differently? But this organization really kind of helped, not only get me on the right track and say, hey, no, this isn't your fault. It doesn't matter if you woke up in the middle of the night and beat him. It's just what he did is not your fault. They also help the children, get in touch with therapists and things like that, to try to help them work through, because the children witnessed him effectively just really beating the crap out of me for about an hour. I would say it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours. That he just kept on and on and on. So that they really kind of drove the seat, so said, no, you're gonna get a protection order. This is what you're gonna do. We're gonna help you. We're gonna be there. And they were there more for me than the actual state of North Dakota.
Okay. See, the reason I want these stories told, mine, yours, and Derek's, is because it shows three different sides of the spectrum, but we're all on the same page for this issue, which is shared parenting. And so I want people to understand that we all have had different backgrounds. We've all had problems with relationships. We've all had different interactions with the state, with helping organizations and everything else. But the one thing we agree on is that shared parenting, under, I would say, at least probably 90% of the cases. There are cases where it obviously is not advised, but I would think that there would be a workable solution under at least 90% of the cases, where we can work to keep the dads as part of an integral focus in the family, even though the parents have moved on. The kids is where the focus needs to be. Derrick, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, I do. And I think the answer to that question is simply, we need to pass an equal shared parenting bill. We need language in the laws, because the current laws specifically, and North Dakota is not the only state that has this, but there is a growing trend of making it clear that each parent is equal and equally protected under the law. Okay. In North Dakota, we use a standard that has been well established, called the best interest factors. And the best interest factors basically lay out a guideline for the courts that is vague, very vague, to say things like, well, we'll judge you on your morality, or any other factors that we consider important. Of course, there's some things too, like the health and welfare of the child, and the stability of the home. There's some things like that, but really the best interest factors are a division creator. We need a law that very specifically states that each parent is equal under the law, and we will not have a court decide unless we have these rebuttable presumptions. Okay, so the rebuttable presumptions would be your standard things like, say you beat the kid. Well, yeah, probably shouldn't have the parent. Say you're in prison. You probably shouldn't have the kid. There's say you're into drugs. Well, yeah, you probably shouldn't have the kid. Or say, there's a lot of the different ones. Say you're a pedophile. I mean, yeah, you probably shouldn't be around the kids, but there are good parents out there, and those rebuttable presumptions would be the small majority of the cases. We need a law that says, by clear and convincing evidence, because every parent under the Supreme Court has been presumed as fit. Okay, if you look at Troxel versus Granville, Pierce versus Society of Sisters, and a whole bunch of different court cases that have laid out what the states have said, well, we got to come around these court rulings. They will say that some things like it's not in the best interest of the child, so the states have codified that. Right. And what they've done is created division and created these things where, well, you have to prove you're better than somebody else. Well, that's not how it should be. It took two people to make the kids, and it should be two. The kids deserve both parents because the kids don't care. It's not about mom and dad who's better than anybody else. Nobody cares about that. The kids are what matters because all they want is what mom and dad. And they want mom and dad equally. They want dad to go wrestle with them on the floor. They want dad to throw a football. They want mom to do their hair or just lay with them and watch a movie. That's the kind of simple things that the kids want, and it's not that they don't care that mom and dad are fighting. They don't care that mom and dad hate each other. They just want mom and dad equally. They don't even care that the courts are saying things. They just want mom and dad. And we need something that in the North Dakota law, specifically because the judges around the state in general are absolutely ruling unconstitutionally against parents to make it to where they have no say in anything. And I'm going through that right now in my case. Like I specifically requested in August, a year in advance, that I should be able to exercise my weekend. No, we need to not have that because I requested a year in advance and I want my weekend. Well, you can't have that. Well, there's no law saying she can't say no to me, specifically because they said, well, it's good reason in the divorce judgment. Well, what's good reason? There's no, it's a vague generality and that's how these courts operate off of. And that is how the best interest factors are as a whole, is they're just vague generalities. And then we side with parent A to give custody to the kids. And then the other parent is just stuck with bills, child support, and a whole bunch of other things. And what do they not get? They don't get time with their kids. We need to make sure that time is equal, as close to possible as equal.
Now, I got a question for you because
Sure.
you were accused of domestic violence. You had your guns taken away. You were guilty before proven innocent. You were never proven innocent. You couldn't get your guns back and other things. So when you're talking about some of these things, like if you're a pedophile, if you're a drug addict or whatever, how are you going to be able to prove causality? Because you had no proof against you and you still got nailed. So what's going to stop some lawyer from, quite frankly, bastardizing the system again? And you've got the legislation, but you're still in the same boat.
And the legislation needs to be elevating a standard of proof, okay? Because right now the current standard of proof is preponderance of the evidence, okay? That means it's a 50-50 thing. And all you need to win that case is slightly more than 50-50. We need clear and convincing evidence because remember, all the court cases, Pierce versus Society Sisters, Troxel versus Granville, again, I could go on and on about all these cases where they specifically state you have a constitutional right, and it is your constitutional right to parent. They need to establish clear and convincing evidence because all parents are presumed fit until proven unfit. And that's what people need to realize is you have to have that clear and convincing evidence. We can't say beyond a reasonable doubt because it's not a criminal case effectively in divorce court. It's a civil case. And that has been a well-established precedent in this country. Civil cases, the highest standard of proof is clear and convincing evidence. I'm okay with that. Clear and convincing is proven to 90%. Okay. You have to prove that parent is no longer fit to parent. If we do not have an exact wording of saying, hey, you are presumed fit until proven unfit, there is no law and no bill that will ever be passed that will ever make anything right in the state because it will always default to the best interest factors.
Is there anything in the legislation that you're hoping is proposed that would have some teeth? For example, if you showed up to pick up your kids and you were told no, you scheduled your week, whatever, in advance, you're told no. What is the teeth that would command, without having to go back to court, have the kids still out of your reach, the individual, whether it's the wife or the husband, because it could go both ways, what is the teeth to make them comply?
Something showing more than good cause. Something more than saying the teeth behind what you want is going to be something that lays out a must-do standard by the court. Okay, the courts do not have any must-do standards right now. We need must over shall. We need must over should. The courts have to operate a very specific way. That is the teeth behind anything that needs to be passed at this point. I mean, I know there's a bill out there right now in the talking about something very simple, 2184, right? That basically just says unless a party shows good cause, while additional parenting time should not be ordered, if the court finds an allegation of harm by one parent against the other is false and not made in good faith, a court shall order additional parenting time. Great concept, except for the fact good cause. They use that exact same language in my divorce decree, and that is why I cannot, right? And I'm going to use an example of how language in a bill does not factor into a whole lot of things, because and it very much is important why we use must, shall, good cause over clear and convincing evidence, because unless a party shows good cause, well, my divorce decree says the same thing. You are allowed to exercise one weekend a month, and the other party is allowed to deny it over good cause, and then you're guaranteed your second weekend. Well, what defines good cause? There is no definition of good cause on this, because good cause could be I was sick. Good cause could be I planned a family vacation, even though it was never requested, even though it was requested a year in advance and you can't prove receipts, you're planning. That's good cause. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons. Good cause is very vague, right? Good cause does not give any teeth to this. What we need to say is probably in this case, we need to say a party shows by clear and convincing evidence. That's your teeth behind the bill, because it will drive the court to actually say, okay, let's take the vacation example for one. Okay, we're going to say, well, I don't want you to have your weekend because of vacation. Okay, I'm taking a vacation. Fine, fair. You paid your money. But if you can prove that you paid your money towards that and there's already reservation somewhere, probably clear and convincing evidence that you might have your right to exercise that weekend. But good cause is not saying that, well, I got a weekend planned and I'm not going to show you. That's good cause, though. That's technically good cause.
So here's the other thing, though. So you requested a year in advance and we're basically told no. Mm-hmm. To me, there should be some form of, because this just seems to be malicious. And that's me saying it.
Just to not to interrupt, but I was also denied my second weekend too because she doesn't want to travel. So let's talk about that. Let's talk.
But that's what I'm getting at. See, and so that allows one parent, male, female, I don't care, to be able to manipulate the system without the other parent having any firm recourse let's say a vacation was scheduled. We got that. All right. So at that point, there should be something that kicks in that assures you something that comes back to you. If this occurs, then you are guaranteed X amount of weekends. Do you understand what I'm saying? Quid pro quo.
Yeah, and we need that. And again, I'm not going to say that there's laws out there that prevent that. But at the same time, these laws have no teeth. That's why we need standards like clear and convincing evidence. We need beyond a reasonable doubt. We need to drive these courts. We need language like must. The court must grant additional parenting time if parenting time is missed. And that's where a bill, say a bill was getting presented in the Senate that would actually say something like that. It would have more teeth than just saying, hey, we're going to have a presumption. A rebuttable presumption. A rebuttable presumption does not drive a court to say, well, okay, that's cool. I mean, we can presume that you're unfit based on these standards, but how do we derive the directive prior to? Well, you don't have a directive prior to. And that's a bill that is getting ready to be presented in the Senate, or I'm sorry, the House, where of North Dakota, where they're going to present a bill just like that. I don't have the bill number because it doesn't exist yet. But until that bill comes out and says each parent is guaranteed 50-50 and a presumption of fitness or unfitness is guaranteed under the law, you have no bill, a shared parenting bill. You have to have the teeth behind it. And I know, and the game they're trying to play up there is what they're trying to say is they're trying to say things like, well, if we'll pass it down, we'll fix it later.
No,
Okay.
no, no.
We don't do that. Okay. You
No,
need
no,
to,
no, no.
we have one shot to get this right, because I'm going to tell you right now what's going to happen with that bill that's about ready to go forward in the House up there. And once they get a bill number, I'll be more than happy to present it. We do not have that bill number. And until they get that, the bill they want to present will never, it will be declared unconstitutionally vague, fashion, holy crap, and we will never have shared parenting in North Dakota ever again, because they will always rely on that case to say shared parenting is unconstitutional. And they are trying to drive that wedge so far deep right now up there. And I'm not saying it's all everybody up there, because there are some good senators, and there's some good House of Representative members that are saying, are questioning that logic of, let's just pass it and we'll fix it later. And yeah, but it's in the works, and you know what, and I hopefully they question that bill, because it doesn't have very good teeth behind it, because there's no standard set forward to the court. The court, once you do that, courts are going to do whatever they want.
I have another question for you, and that is receipts, because I think that there should be a standard that, rather than allowing the court to arbitrarily decide this as well, I think that there should be a standard where when the children are in the custody of each respective parent, that receipts are kept, especially for the person who's putting the bill for a lot of this, that doesn't have the opportunity to see where the money is going. I am not saying I believe that whoever the parent of custody is automatically going to be nefarious. However, I have seen plenty of situations where that money was not going to the children's welfare as much as it should be. And there did not seem to be anything that was required as to proof of where said money was going, including for added lessons or whatever that medical appointment. I mean, it doesn't seem to me to be this tough. You have to keep receipts and stuff for taxes. And I'm just kind of sitting there going, why is this such a vague area as well?
But I mean that I can kind of speak on that. I mean, I think it's a huge question, and especially with, and I'm even going to bring in with some of the amounts that some people pay, because you have to also think, Charles, there are lots of things that we have to pay for, children and no children, right? So that, based off that, and the fact that I don't think the courts really want to get in the mix with that, as far as knowing exactly where it's going, because guess what? Then they're going to start losing money, and because we know that the courts also kind of get some sort of kickbacks with these things. Like the state of Texas, they get up to what, 60 some cents on the dollar for child support. And then back to your other question, because when we need to start setting up a fine, like fines when these parents are denied. If we set up fines and have like a 3-strike rule, like your third time you've denied this within a certain count, like at the calendar year, if you denied the parent 3 times, you should lose your residential responsibility, because you're effectively, it's not about Derrick, it's not about his ex, it's not about me, it's not about my ex, it's about the kid. And that's what I think, that's what the courts have forgotten. They're so hell bent on beating down dad in most cases that they forgot about what's good for the kid. But back to your initial question with the child support, that's easy. They don't want to track it, because then that means if there's $500, it's going to mom's or hair, nails, dad's guitars, whatever the case may be. It's that then they're going to be like, okay, well, that's not what is needed a month, because like I said, we still have power, water, we still have all those bills, kid or no kid.
And to expand on that, I think one of the things we need to realize is in maybe kind of backing up a little bit to understand where we're at. People need to understand where we came from. In North Dakota, child support is based off of, and it's codified in 1407, which is the North Dakota Century Code on that. It was basically it's a percentage of your income, and effectively it's right around 25%. I mean, rough estimate. Again, I know it's kind of on a curve, but we'll just say 25% for good numbers, because most of it's right on that 25% curve. At 25%, people don't realize how much that money that takes away. I will
A
give a
lot.
full example from mine. Yeah. I pay $1,400 a month in child support approximately. Okay. That means I'm paying her 16,000 a year. Okay. Which is a very, very large scope. And I have yet to see a receipt where those go, because getting into the receipt part, I would strongly encourage anybody. We need to push a new law that actually, and it's very, I would say it's probably very similar to what Delaware is doing, to where child support should be put on a card. Okay. Well, I'm not, doesn't mean I'm a welfare guy, but at the same time, put it on like an EBT type card. Okay. That card should be at any point should be requested by a parent or non-custodial parent, or some, I believe the term they use is payee or obligee, I think, in the state of North Dakota. That card, every time it's swiped, I want to see what's going for. Well, what if it's swiped for, we'll use Phyllis example, hair, nails, or buying a new guitar or whatever it may be. Okay. We should be able to see that, and those funds should be deducted from your next child support payment because it's not going towards the kids. Now, I mean, I think, there's a lot of things to where it can go for the kid. Food, clothing. I don't believe shelter should be an option because I'm still paying for a house. I mean, why should I have to pay for hers too? But I mean, food, clothing, possibly dance lessons, or we could say guitar lessons. Seems how we're on a guitar topic
Braces.
here. Braces, medical, a whole bunch of different things. That it could be used for, and I think we need to codify that in a law that would prevent things like this, because it shouldn't be used for your parents, for the custodial parents' next vacation. It shouldn't be used to buy, their new boyfriend's truck and make the truck payment. It shouldn't be there to do anything other than support the kids. And if it's not used, and I would be borderline writing this into a law, even though I probably question the constitutionality of it. It should be any money that is not used per the month should be put in a trust fund or a savings account for the kid. That way, when they turn the age of 18, they will be set up if it's done right.
What if you did a bank method though? Like if, like for, I know this is just
Yep.
completely off the wall, but I'm just like, if, like, it's just say for, we'll just use a whole number, 1,000. Like if I was given $1,000 a month for child support and I only had to use 300 of it, there's $700 left in that bank. The next child support payment should maybe be $300. It kind of, does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't take $1,400. The 1,400, I myself have about $1,400 a month.
I'm gonna expand on that, Phyllis, because while if it's 50-50 parenting, shared parenting, why is that child support still going when the kid's not with the mother?
Well, we've been asking that question too. I mean, even when it's not 50-50 parenting, that's still so. I'll get to use an example. I get my kid, I have my kids in the summer for, we'll say, a month. It should be more, but again, courts won't allow that. I mean, that's another discussion. But when the kids are here for over 30 days, I still pay the same cut of child support. What's she doing with that money while it's not there? Well, I don't have a reason for that. It's fun money at that point, and I'll call it out direct because they told me in court I shouldn't do that. Well, guess what? I'm doing it. So, because it becomes fun money, all right, and that's exactly what it becomes. Child support at this point in the state of America is no longer child support, because child support back in the 80s and even early 90s was designed for absent parents. It was never designed for parents like me or Phyllis, who had control and want to be a part of the kids' lives. It was designed for parents who don't want to be. Okay. It was never designed with that. And the Social Security Act of 94 did this, and they changed the term from absent parent to non-custodial parent. And that's where we're at today because of it.
I think what happened is so many places have basically outlawed alimony. What they've done is they've rolled the alimony into the child support because that's more palatable. Their $1,400 a month is more than both Bruce and I make on Social Security a month combined.
Sure.
So those kids are doing fairly well because your wife works full time and everything else. And I do not wish for a kid to go without anything. But what I'm attempting to say is, it sounds to me that there's a lot more going on here than child support. It sounds to me that we've rolled spousal support into this.
And I would fully agree with that because I've said that before. Is that effectively it's backdoor alimony. I haven't but I mean there's again, and it's not just child support that gets roped into that. It's pensions and 401ks. I mean, I've lost my entire 401k because of my divorce. Never got to touch hers, but I lost $26,000 out of my 401k. I've lost
Wait. Time out. From a lady who's been investing since she was about 24 here. This makes no sense. If you've got a pension and she's been working full time and had an opportunity for a pension and everything else, why couldn't that just be classified as a wash? You both get to keep your pensions.
It should have been, but there's specific provisions with my pension, being it was specific provisions with my pension that allowed that to be taken. But it's not just the pension; it's the 401k too. But again, it's because, but they again, and I think we've talked about this in the past about equal versus equitable. Okay. Yeah. And that's a law that needs to be changed also. Again, nothing in session right now that is driving that, but at the same time, equal would mean straight down the middle, 50-50. This is yours, this is yours, this is yours. Equitable means, yeah, you're going to get the house that she doesn't want. You're going to get the camper she doesn't want. You can keep your truck. She gets a car, and well, because you have the house and because the house's value has increased by $80,000, you gotta basically buy her out, even though she's never made a payment, never did any part of upgrades, never paid anything. But that's equitable. It's equal versus equitable at that point.
Well, let me utilize this to segue off of something because people are going to go, okay, now you're at the heart of the matter. You're talking finances and stuff rather than the children. So that's what this is really about. Allow me to say something in everyone's defense who's in this situation. When you're talking about literally hamstringing financially one parent, that impacts the family structure.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
So when people think that you can talk about a shared parenting and not bring financial into it, I don't know how they think they can even begin to imagine that.
Yeah, and I think what people need to understand is if we have shared parenting laws, the financials might actually, if you base it off the North Dakota Administrative Code, we might actually have a chance to make things more equitable because the Administrative Code, in theory, should kick in. Now, I'm not huge in theory, but if the laws wrote the way the laws wrote, we exercise the law as wrote, you're actually going to have shared parenting. So say it's straight down the middle, 50-50, 180 days a year. Okay. Just call it 50-50 for round numbers.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And what's going to happen is at that point is both incomes will be calculated into child support. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, we don't even have to go up to 180 days because all you need in North Dakota is 100 overnights a year, to where that administrative code kicks in and the other party's income counts. So if we want to take both incomes, in my case, I think we were very comparable, maybe within $10,000 of each other a year. I think if my calculations were correct, I might pay her $200 a month. Might. And I think that's a very big might because a whole lot of different things that could play into that. But because I am only allowed, because in the interim, in this case, before the final judgment of the divorce, they stripped me of my rights and allowed her to move to New York. I had no opportunity to fight that provision to get 50-50 or as close to 50-50 as possible. And now I'm stuck paying this because I only get 15% a year to see my kids. And that's what's granted to me. Now I cannot travel once a month to New York because it's ridiculous. It's inherently impossible for me to do that. Okay, because of what I do for work and just anybody who, financially it's impossible. There's a whole lot of different reasons why it's impossible for me to travel once a month to New York. But at the same time, if I was to add that 15%, say we get them on February break, or we tack all those breaks onto the end of the summer, or we tack them onto Thanksgiving or Christmas, where we can, instead of the 4 days I'm allotted, I get 10. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do this to get it as close to 50-50 as possible. But when the other side does not want to co-parent, the other side does not want to be reasonable, and you get the lawyers and the judges involved that want to make money, that's when you run into these problems, and you have continued litigation like where I'm going with this.
Problem is this: the legislators seem to have a preponderance of lawyers. Lawyers are not probably going to be wanting to pass any legislation that has teeth, that is going to rain on the parade of said profession. Therefore, do you really think you can get some of this legislation passed?
Yes, I do. I believe, because there's some good people up there. I do. I mean, again, I know you don't hear about them enough, but I think there's enough going on up there where we're going to get something passed. Okay, whether it's good or bad, I don't know yet. I do think something's going to change this year. There's enough pressure on it. I think we can get something passed. It may not be what we prefer, but at the same time, I think something's going to change this year in the dynamics of court, and because there are good people up there, and there is, when you talk to people, it's almost like there's a 90% support rate. Because if you ask somebody, say, do you think kids should have mom and dad equally? 90% of the people are going to say yes. Okay. Well, what if, and then you'll talk about rebuttable presumptions and a whole bunch of different things. But I do believe that there is something that's going to be passed. And I think what needs to happen is we need to get a standard that is very, very clear that states you will be granted 50-50 unless you are proven unfit by clear and convincing evidence. And that is how it should be. There are states that have passed this: Kentucky, Arkansas, Ohio's a big one. South Dakota has a temporary provision, which I guess it's more like a trial run, but it's going to, I mean, they've already got new stuff in their legislature that's going to make it permanent. There's a whole bunch of things that we can do, and there's more that we should do. But if we can just get that language of, hey, you are equal, protected under the law, and get it to the point where kids and parents are protected by the 14th Amendment to say, nope, everybody's equally protected, and unless you're proven unfit, well, you're going to get 50% at the time of the divorce.
Things you want. Obviously, you want 50-50 custody, correct?
Yep.
What are the other two, if in your perfect world, because they're going to be sniping at these things. So of all the things you want, what are the top three that you think are a must have?
Yeah, we need to we need to provide the protections to kids. That's a very, very standard thing. We need to have a rebuttable presumption, okay? But we need to have that rebuttable presumption after it's predicated off of the 50-50. We also need to ensure that these things can be retroactively applied. That is another thing. And we have to eliminate language from the courts. And we have to have a language that is very, very specific. The driving court case right now in North Dakota is Slappy versus Slappy. Okay, or there's a couple of them. It's Slappy versus Slappy and Kuntz versus Slappy. Those two court cases are what's driving this. And the other thing that they want a material change in circumstance, which is basically something that is changed in your life that is significant. The courts nowadays, the Slappy standard that they have put out under the courts, I would call it very unconstitutional. I think the courts have violated their constitutional oath to protect the Constitution with that, because it doesn't grant anybody anything. Because the only thing it grants you is if you can prove you can provide more time to your kids. Well, what if you can't provide more time? What if you can only provide less time because of your job? Well, that's not a material change in circumstance. We need to eliminate the material change in circumstance language. We need to eliminate prima facie case language, which basically means before you even go to change custody disputes, you have to effectively prove it before that your case is winnable. I'm sorry, prima facie case, that needs to go away. and we need to eliminate a lot of the criminal language in these bills, because they'll use language like, okay, well, if you're or evidence of domestic violence. I'm sorry, but evidence isn't a standard. That if you've never been convicted of domestic violence, why should that standard apply? But it does, because all they do is present evidence. Well, it's like, well, oh, here's my evidence. I got a protection order in 2 weeks. Like, it's evidence, and we need to. I mean, I can keep going on and on, because we need to eliminate in the best interest factors the standard of morality. Like, they have a saying, well, if the moral fitness of a parent. I'm sorry, but where does a court get off saying that they can regulate moral fitness? Okay, I mean, I'm sorry, but just because you're a furry doesn't mean you're a bad parent. I know we've talked about furries before, but yeah, we'll go.
So here's the thing. That to me, this moral preponderance is, have we just suddenly jettisoned the time capsule and gone back to the 1940s?
We have, and actually, I mean, and again, we have, and what it comes down to is North Dakota Supreme Court is ignoring Supreme Court standards, U.S. Supreme Court standards, where it's been said that legislatures and courts, they cannot regulate morality, but it's written right in our code, our laws, in that exact words. But what about these other vague standards? I believe the last factor of the best interest factor says anything other that the court deems necessary and proper. Like, I mean, which is like a necessary and proper clause, which we've used a lot, but that's been deemed unconstitutional so many times. Why are we still doing this in North Dakota? And that's the biggest problem of that, is where in North Dakota, where in the Constitution does it allow us to do that? And I can cite you a whole bunch of Supreme Court cases that say that's so wrong.
Okay, so I got a real important question. You've already stated the fact that the courts in North Dakota are literally ignoring Supreme Court rulings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you get your legislation passed. What's to say they're not going to still thumb their nose at you and skip down the road saying, we've done it this way forever. This is the way we're going to continue. Pound sand.
Well, honestly, there's nothing saying that they can't. And that's the problem, because the courts in this country as a whole, I believe, have way too much authority. Effectively, I think people need to realize we are not a democracy anymore. Even though I will say today, it's a great day to be an American, to watch the transfer of power, from one president to another. But we are not a democracy anymore, because the courts have overarching authority over all of this. And one of the things that they have is the ability to interpret laws, which was not written into the Constitution. They took it back in 17 something with Chief Justice Marshall, when they said, no, the court has the power to interpret laws. Well, that interpretation gives them full overarching authority. And because most judges at the level where it's going to matter are appointed, it is judges of the federal court, the Supreme Court, North Dakota Supreme Court. They're all appointed. Even district courts in North Dakota, they're all appointed. Effectively, we're not a democracy. We're an oligarchy, because we have to go through the courts for anything we want to get that interpretation.
Really want you to get some form of legislation passed, and because it'll be better than having nothing on the books for the courts to ignore. But I'd like to, it keeps coming down to power and money.
Yep.
And because we have lots of laws on the book of North Dakota that are, quite frankly, ignored at will. Mm-hmm. Because they benefit the people of North Dakota versus a legislator or a crony or whatever. And so when would we be able to see this legislation going through? Where would we be able to find numbers and stuff so that the people of this audience might be able to reach out to a legislator and go, this is the number, this is the bill, how can they keep track so they can maybe support and know what they're supporting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all the legislatures' names and numbers are on the North Dakota legislature website. You can find any bill that's being presented right now on that. I mean, again, North Dakota, as much as I like to come on these things and say, hey, you're doing this wrong, we have to admit that there are some things that they are doing right. And North Dakota is very open with their legislatures. If you see a bill you don't like, go to Bismarck and testify for it, because you have that ability. Nobody needs to know you're there. You just sign their little book and say, hey, I'm here to testify for bill number whatever, and they'll direct you to where you need to be, and it'll tell you the committee, and it'll give you the room where it's at. It's a very open website that I wish I found a lot earlier in my life, since being here, to see what's going on in the state of North Dakota. Because it is an open process. So, I mean, I'm very thankful that North Dakota does that. The legislature does that to allow people to testify. And if you can't make it to Bismarck, well, you can testify on Zoom. They give you that option too. So
You
they
can
they
also
have
write
multiple.
testimony, because
You
I've
can
written
write testimony.
testimony
Yep.
because
Yeah,
I
written
haven't been able
testimony,
to.
everything.
By the way, my better half has decided he wants to pop in here, so.
I guess.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. Well, I tell you what, I listened to lots of the North Dakota people, and I gotta say, our legislatures and the special people, vagueness is the North Dakota way. They want to be vague, and you said it before. When they write the laws, the legislation, I mean, that is what's going to be number one thing: vagueness. They and aiding in basically it's aiding the judges to do what is status quo, what the special people want, the elites, whatever you want to call them. And another thing about North Dakota is they love their money, and what is their money is from child protection in this instance. And that's what's really happened here. I hate to be a negative person, but I don't see anything happening very likely with this because obviously children are a weapon for, well, parents, but also in North Dakota, it's for the government too. That's just my feelings.
Thanks, Ed.
And you're not wrong. That's the thing, sir. You are not wrong at all. It's all about division. It's all about weaponizing, and it is about money. And we can tie it back to what Phyllis said about 63 cents on the dollar coming from the federal government. Now, I know they say it's to support child support programs. I got it. Okay. What defines a child support program? Judges' retirement? Technically, that's a child support program because that's where it's going.
I know one thing, Health and Human Services over the past 5 to 7 years has quadrupled its budget.
Yep.
That means that they have to have a reason for being. And they are, every time I see legislation come through, I notice that they're constantly writing legislation because they're sending bills down themselves, Health and Human Services.
Yeah. That's another whole discussion.
Yeah, and stuff, because why would you legislate yourself out of a job?
Yeah, and hopefully, just for the record, I do know there is a bill in works on that to actually eliminate, presented by Senator Claire Corey from Grand Forks, to actually eliminate where agencies can introduce their own bills. So hopefully we can get that one. Hopefully that's a good thing. I think it's coming through. I don't know if it's going to pass, probably not, but I don't know the bill number again, haven't seen it yet, but. I mean, I know there's a desire there to eliminate agencies like the Health and Human Services from acting as individual actors and present their own bill.
It just seems to me very self-serving that the AG's office, Health and Human Services, a lot of the departments have the ability to write their own checks by getting into the legislative process. And funny enough, those bills are enforced.
Yeah, and I think that kind of ties into one of the bills that was being presented by I want to say it's the Justice Department or something like that, where they're allowing they want to allow kids to they're going to grant mothers, which is a perfect tie-in. Bill 2115, which hopefully they kill this. I know it got a do not pass vote, but they want to, and I'll read you the exact language because I have it up in front of me here, to employ personnel and establish policies and procedures to authorize a child of a female inmate, going to highlight that, to reside at the Heart River Correctional Center under the care and general control of the female inmate.
There you go.
I'll let Phyllis talk on this part.
So
Let's
what?
go,
So that,
Phyllis.
yeah, I mean, to me, when he said that, my first words were completely censored. I mean, I was just like, what? Because you get into the mothers are better. And what about single fathers that may make a little mistake that have to spend 30 days, 60 days in jail? That are we going to have a facility for them too, to have their children there too, if they have like that primary? That, I mean, that is the most asinine thing whoever wrote that, whoever thought of that, it
We've
just needs to be.
We've already got a shortage of prisons. We've already got a shortage of prison personnel and everything else. And now we're going to build a prison specifically available so that the women can give birth, keep their children in the prison. From what I understood when I did a little digging, it was up to the age of 2. Wow. You know, and I know exactly what's going to be coming forth from this is that mother baby bonding time and stuff. And I'm just sitting here going, you know what? If you want mother baby bonding time, forgive me, stay the hell out of prison.
There you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're it's like, okay, I don't even think I can wrap my head around how that would work. It's like for the kid to grow to essentially for their first 2 years behind bars, especially if dad's on the outside and wants to be active. Oh, no, that your dad, you're bad. You can't have him. But let's just take you to
you can talk to the kid through the glass.
Yeah, and just to highlight here, it's actually starting this law, the bill that's being presented with 2115, and like I said, I'm very thankful that it got a do not pass from the North Dakota Senate Judiciary committee there, the 7-0 do not pass. I think it needs to be highlighted here that it contradicts the best interest factors, and that's the current law. Like, it's a direct contradiction because it prioritizes. And best interest factors say they don't prioritize, but they do. But I mean, that's a direct prioritization of a mother over a father, which also is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. Because last I remember, we are all granted equal protection under law. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy and that doesn't exist anymore, but I'm pretty sure I can still read the Constitution and see it.
The reason I laugh at this is because so many things are listed as for the good of the child, and they're the exact damn opposite. It's typical of legislation. Whatever it's named, it's probably going to do the exact opposite, but it's named that to convince the people who are supposed to be monitoring what's going on at the legislature that this is a good thing. We need to pass it. It's the mind games. It's the verbiage games that is played by the lawyers, the legal people and stuff, and it has to literally stop. There's something like 1,500 bills that are flying through this legislature. Why?
Yeah, why? And the bills range from such a wide action to I mean, we're talking gun rights. I mean, there's a whole bunch of gun bills out there. Some of them all right, some of them questionable. Because I think one of them, if I remember right, I can't remember the number, but one of them wants to basically say you have to have a permit. Well, that's eliminating North Dakota's constitutional carry in this state.
Not only that, but there's a mental midget out there that wants to bring back the blue laws so we can close everything. Too, yeah. I mean, seriously, you know what? My life is not impacted by this. Why can't you not concentrate on the important crap?
Yeah, if I want to go down and buy a case of beer or a bottle of bourbon on a Sunday, I should be allowed to, because I'm sorry, I'm not the most religious guy in this world. Why should I have to abide by that standard? It shouldn't be that way. Not only will it affect businesses, like there's a huge downturn on that, and I mean, that could go all day about why that's bad.
The heck about the booze and the bullets? You couldn't buy diapers.
Couldn't do that either.
I'm just saying, our legislature has their head so far up their anal orifice that I just gotta say we need to have solid legislation like the stuff that you're talking about being put forward. The rest of this stuff, can we just leave it for them for when they're knocking back the beers later in the evening after the session? Let them ferret that crap out at that point.
Yeah, and really what it needs, I mean, again, effectively what they're doing when they make vague laws like this is it does tie us to what I would call a Revolutionary War standard, where the laws are vaguely interpreted. They are, I mean, there is a reason when 1776 and 74 and all the way up to through the Revolutionary War where we fought for these rights. And we need to get back to doing that again. I'm not saying we need to start a revolution, but we need to get involved and we need to get people, I mean, get people out there. Call your legislatures. Their information is so very open in this state, and I'm very thankful for that. And most of them are willing to talk to you. I know there's a few that won't, but at the same because they think they're better than other people, but there's a lot of them that are really good out there. I mean, I could tell you District 42 here in Grand Forks, Claire Corey and Douglas Ochesky, like they're fantastic people. I've met them both. They're great people, and they actually have the right intentions. Now, I will say with the right intentions, you don't always make the right decision, but at the same time, I can get behind some of the right intentions because their heart's in the right spot and they're not trying to play political games like our other District 42 rep, who I'm coming for her seat in 2028, is Emily O'Brien.
Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left. And what I'd like you to do for me is tell me how, first of all, you're going to keep in touch with me. You're going to let me know bill numbers and stuff, and I can relate to the audience things to watch. But what is it that you really, really want to see done with this bill, and who do you think might be bringing one forward?
Okay. So I think really, I mean, it's hard to say. I know Kathy Freilich in the House. She has something. There is a bill. Like I said, I don't know the number. But I know Kathy Freilich is presenting a bill. But that bill I do know needs some changes, and I do know it needs to. If they don't make the changes, I mean, the other thing we need to see in that bill is a military provision to protect our armed forces in this. Specifically stating that missed parenting time should be granted to a person of that person, the military person's choosing. We need to protect our armed forces rights. We need to protect that. We need to get direct language for the court that eliminates a material change of circumstance. We need to get direct language that says each parent is presumed fit, barring a finding of unfitness with a clear and convincing evidence type standard. And we really, really need to get people to ensure that direct language of 50-50 is in that bill. Because if you don't have that and you keep using vague languages like, well, we're just going to have a rebuttable presumption and just assume that the courts are going to do it right, we can't do that. It's not going to happen. Like the courts won't do the right thing. I have no faith in the courts here. They're terrible. They're not good. I mean, I could go all day about what I think about the courts around here, but we need to get the legislature on board to make sure that they write a military provision and pass an actual language of 50-50 and overturn SLAPPY. They need to, by using a material change of circumstance language and eliminating that.
It's time to go. I've got my disclaimer up that covers us all from hopefully front to back. But Derrick, Phyllis, thank you guys so much. We will revisit this. Derrick, keep in touch with me as numbers of bills and stuff come forward so I can pass that along to the audience. Bless you both for keeping up the fight. And Phyllis, thanks for being a fellow human being who believes that gender doesn't necessarily make you a great parent.
Yeah, and Kit, like I've told you this before, I'm glad anytime you need some content, we're here to help and have some fun, and come on and do this over at the house one day, and we'll have a big old barbecue and we'll do a podcast and have a good old time.
Doesn't need sighting in. Y'all take care, everybody. It's Pitbull Politics. Here we go. Take care, gang. Be good.
Thank you.